I pulled into my driveway at 11:47 p.m., and honestly, I was dead on my feet. 10 days of back-to-back meetings, airport delays, and sleeping in hotels that all smelled the same. But I was home. Finally. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and headed for the front door, already imagining Elena's smile when I walked in. The porch light was off. Weird. Sophie knew I was coming tonight. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was dark. Not just dim. Dark. Like no one had been here in days. "Elena!" I called out, flipping on the hall light. Nothing. "Sophie, baby, I'm home!" My voice echoed back at me, swallowed by the silence. I walked toward the kitchen, my heart starting to pick up speed, and that's when I heard it. A sound. Faint. Scratch. 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 Coming from the basement door. Then a low, broken moan. So quiet I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. "Elena." I moved closer, my stomach twisting. The scratching stopped. Then it started again, slower this time, weaker, like someone dragging their nails against wood. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted. Locked. I froze. We never locked the basement door. I fumbled for my keys, but the lock wasn't the regular one. I looked down, and my blood went cold. A brand new padlock, shiny, silver, locked from the outside. And behind that door, my wife was dying. Let me take you back. Back to when life made sense. When I knew who the monsters were and who I could trust. Elena and I met 23 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. Ironic, considering how much time we'd end up spending in hospitals later. She was a pediatric nurse, and God, she had this laugh that could light up a room. We got married 6 months later. Everyone said we were rushing, but when you know, you know. We built a life together. A beautiful, ordinary, safe life. And then, 4 years ago, everything shifted. Elena started dropping things, small stuff at first, a coffee mug, her car keys. Then her handwriting got shaky. I noticed her hand trembling when she tried to button her coat one morning, and she laughed it off. "I'm just tired, Jackson. Stop worrying." But I couldn't stop, so I made her see a doctor, then another, then a specialist. And on a cold Tuesday in October, in an office that smelled like antiseptic and fear, a neurologist told my 46-year-old wife that she had early-onset Parkinson's disease. I watched her face crumble. I watched her try to hold it together, nodding as the doctor explained tremors and rigidity and dopamine and medications. And when we got to the car, she finally broke. She cried so hard she couldn't breathe, and all I could do was hold her and promise that I would never let her face this alone. Parkinson's isn't a death sentence. That's what the doctor said, and he was right. But it's a life sentence of a different kind. Elena needed medication, carbidopa levodopa, taken at exact times, every single day, to control the tremors and keep her muscles from locking up. Miss a dose by even 2 hours, and her body would betray her. I became her caregiver, her partner, her protector. I learned her medication schedule better than my own work calendar. I set alarms. I labeled pill bottles. I made sure she was never alone during a bad tremor episode, and we adapted. We created routines. We found joy in the small things, her favorite British baking show, Sunday morning pancakes, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder and whisper, "We're gonna be okay, aren't we, Jackson?" And I'd kiss her forehead and say, "Always." I meant it. I would have done anything to keep that promise. Anything. But I didn't know that the real threat wasn't the disease. It was sleeping in the room down the hall. Sophie came into our lives when Elena and I had been trying for years. Fertility treatments, disappointments, hope that kept getting crushed. And then, finally, a positive test. Elena cried for an hour straight. We thought Sophie was our miracle. And for a long time, she was. She was a bright kid, always smiling, always performing in school plays and bringing home art projects covered in glitter. But somewhere around her teenage years, something shifted. She became distant, moody. She'd lock herself in her room for hours. And when she came out, she'd look at us like we were strangers. I chalked it up to normal teenage stuff. Elena worried more than I did, but I told her, she'll grow out of it. They all do. Except Sophie never really grew out of it. She's 24 now, still living at home, still working part-time at a boutique downtown, a job that barely covers her car insurance, let alone the designer purses and weekend trips she's always posting about on Instagram. I'd ask her about money sometimes, gently, like, "Hey, Soph, you doing okay? Need help with anything?" And she'd flash me that smile, the one that looked just like Elena's, and say, "I'm fine, Dad. I've got it handled." But the credit card statements told a different story. The loans I didn't know she'd taken out in my name told a different story. Still, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that my daughter, my little girl, was just figuring things out like everyone else her age. And then Elena got sick, and suddenly, Sophie transformed. She started helping around the house. She'd sit with Elena during her bad days, holding her hand, asking about her medication schedule. "Dad, you look exhausted," she'd say, rubbing my shoulders after I'd spent another sleepless night monitoring Elena's tremors. "Let me take over for a bit. I've got this." I was so damn grateful. I thought, finally, she's stepping up. She's becoming the woman we raised her to be. When Sophie offered to stay with Elena while I went on my business trip, I actually teared up. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" I asked, and she hugged me, tight, like she used to when she was little, and whispered, "Dad, I love you guys. I'd do anything for Mom. Go. We'll be fine." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. My boss, Richard, didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Jackson, we've got a situation in Denver. The Carmichael merger is falling apart, and you're the only one who knows the account inside and out. I need you there tomorrow morning. 10 days. Max." My stomach dropped. 10 days. I hadn't left Elena alone for more than a few hours since her diagnosis, let alone 10 days. "Richard, I can't. My wife. She needs me. Her medication schedule is complicated. And if something goes wrong..." He cut me off. "I understand, and I'm sorry, but if we lose Carmichael, we lose 20% of our revenue. That's layoffs, Jackson. Yours included. I need you on this." I hung up and just sat there in my car, staring at nothing. How could I leave her? Elena's Parkinson's wasn't just about taking pills. It was about timing. Miss her morning dose by even an hour, and she'd be locked up, trembling so hard she couldn't hold a glass of water. I'd seen it happen once when we ran out of refills over a holiday weekend, and it terrified me. The rigidity in her muscles, the panic in her eyes, the way she whispered, "Jackson, I can't move. I can't move." I swore I'd never let that happen again, but I also couldn't lose my job. Elena's medical bills were already drowning us. The insurance only covered so much, and the co-pays for her neurologist visits alone were eating through our savings like wildfire. When I got home, Sophie was in the kitchen making tea. I told her about Denver, and before I could even finish, she turned to me with this calm, confident expression. "Dad, go." I blinked. "Sophie, I can't just..." She put her hand on my arm. "Yes, you can. I've been watching you take care of Mom for years. I know her schedule. I know her meds. I know what to do if she has a bad tremor day. I've got this." I wanted to believe her so badly. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I kept Elena's entire care routine documented. "Okay, listen. Her carbidopa-levodopa. She takes it at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. Exactly those times. If she's even 30 minutes late, her symptoms get worse. There's a backup bottle in the bathroom cabinet, and her neurologist's number is on the fridge. If anything feels off, you call me immediately, or call 911. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. You call me. Sophie nodded, taking the phone from my hands and scrolling through the notes like she was studying for an exam. Dad, I've got this. I promise. Go save your job. Mom and I will be fine. She even walked me through the medication schedule right there in the kitchen, reciting the times and doses back to me perfectly. I hugged her. I actually thanked her. And the next morning, I kissed Elena goodbye, told her I loved her, and left my wife in the hands of a monster. The first night in Denver, I could barely sleep. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a call, a text, anything that said Elena was okay. Around 9 p.m., I finally caved and called home. Sophie picked up on the second ring, her voice bright and casual. Hey, Dad, how was the flight? I could hear the TV in the background, some reality show Elena loved. It was fine. How's your mom? Did she take her evening meds? Sophie laughed. This light, breezy sound that should have reassured me but somehow didn't. Dad, relax. Yes, she took them right at 7. She's on the couch right now watching her baking show. Want me to put her on? Relief flooded through me. No, don't bother her. Just keep an eye on her, okay? Sophie sighed, but it was affectionate, like I was being an overprotective worrywart. I will. I promise. Now go get some sleep. You've got a big day tomorrow. By night 5, I'd fallen into a rhythm. The merger talks were brutal. 12-hour days of spreadsheets and conference calls and trying to convince angry investors not to pull out. But every night, without fail, I'd call home. And every night, Sophie had a story ready. Mom's doing great, Dad. We made spaghetti tonight. She even helped me stir the sauce. Or, she's napping right now, but she asked about you earlier, said she misses you. On night 5, Sophie sent me a photo. Elena, sitting in her favorite armchair, smiling at the camera with a cup of tea in her hands. I stared at that picture for a solid 10 minutes, zooming in on her face, looking for any sign of distress. She looked fine. Happy, even. I texted back. She looks good. You're taking amazing care of her, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Sophie sent back a heart emoji. I saved that photo to my phone. I even showed it to Richard during a lunch break, bragging about how my daughter had really stepped up. See? She's a good kid. I was worried for nothing. Richard clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You raised her right, Jackson." I believed him. God, I was such a fool. Night 8 was different. I called at my usual time, 8:30 p.m., and the phone rang and rang and rang, straight to voicemail. I tried again, voicemail. My chest tightened. I called the house landline. No answer. I was 2 seconds away from calling the police when my phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. OMG, Dad, I'm so sorry. I spilled water on my phone and the speaker is totally fried. I can barely hear anything, but we're fine. Mom's asleep. Everything's good. I'll get it fixed tomorrow. Love you. I read that message 3 times, my hands shaking. Something felt wrong. The timing, the excuse. It was too convenient. But what was I supposed to do? Accuse my daughter of lying, fly home and abandon the merger. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, overprotective, so I texted back, "Okay, but if there's any problem, use Mom's phone to call me. Any problem." She sent back a thumbs up. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in that hotel room, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until I could go home. 2 more days. Just 2 more days, and I'd be back with Elena. I told myself she was fine. I told myself Sophie was taking care of her. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. The flight home felt like it took a lifetime. I'd wrapped up the merger 2 hours early and booked the first flight out. I didn't even tell Sophie I was coming home early. I wanted to surprise them. Maybe bring flowers for Elena. Take them both out to dinner to celebrate. I kept imagining walking through that door and seeing Elena's face light up. 10 days apart was the longest we'd been separated since her diagnosis, and I missed her so much it physically hurt. When the plane finally landed at 10:15 p.m., I practically ran through the terminal. I didn't even wait for my checked bag. I'd come back for it tomorrow. I just needed to see my wife. But the second I pulled into the driveway and saw the dark house, that sick feeling from night 8 came rushing back. No lights, not even the porch light we always left on. Sophie's car was gone. I grabbed my carry-on and walked to the front door, my pulse hammering in my ears. The spare key was still under the mat where we always kept it. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and the silence hit me like a physical weight. "Elena," my voice cracked. "Sophie." Nothing. I flipped on the hall light and looked around. The living room was wrong. Elena's favorite blanket wasn't on the couch. Her reading glasses weren't on the side table. The kitchen was worse. Dishes piled in the sink, old takeout containers on the counter, a smell like something had been rotting in the trash for days. "Elena!" I was shouting now, moving through the house room by room, my heart in my throat. Bedroom, empty. Bathroom, empty. Sophie's room, empty. But her bed was made, like she hadn't slept there in a while. And then I heard it. That sound. Scratch. 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 Faint. Desperate. Coming from the basement door at the end of the hallway. I froze. We barely used the basement. It was just storage, old furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations. Elena never went down there, especially not with her balance issues. "Elena!" I called out, moving toward the sound. The scratching stopped. Then a moan, low, broken, barely human. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted, locked. "Elena! Baby! Are you in there?" I yanked harder, rattling the door in its frame. Another moan, weaker this time, and then the scratching started again. Slower now, like whoever was on the other side was losing strength. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. But when I finally looked at the lock, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. A padlock. A brand new, shiny silver padlock, locked from the outside. Someone had locked my wife in the basement. Someone had trapped her down there in the dark. And I knew. God help me, I knew. It was Sophie. I didn't think. I just ran. Ran to the garage, my vision tunneling, my breath coming in short. Panicked gasps. I threw open the tool cabinet and grabbed the first thing I saw, a crowbar, heavy and cold in my hands. I sprinted back to that door, and I swear to God, time slowed down. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I could hear that scratching, so faint now, like she was fading. "Elena, I'm here. I'm getting you out." I jammed the crowbar into the gap between the door and the frame and pulled with everything I had. The wood splintered. The screws groaned. I didn't care if I destroyed the entire door frame. I was getting to my wife. One more pull, and the lock mount ripped clean out of the wood. The door swung open, and the smell hit me like a punch to the gut. It was the smell of sickness, of waste, of someone who'd been left to rot. I gagged, covering my mouth with my sleeve. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The basement light switch didn't work. Of course it didn't. So I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness as I stumbled down the stairs, my shoes catching on the uneven steps. "Elena, where are you?" My voice echoed off the concrete walls. And then I saw her. Oh God, no. She was on the floor in the far corner, curled up on her side like a broken doll. Her clothes were filthy, soaked with urine and God knows what else. Her hair was matted to her face. And her body, Jesus. Her body was shaking so violently I thought she was having a seizure. I dropped to my knees beside her, my hands hovering over her because I didn't know where to touch, didn't know if I'd hurt her. "Elena, baby, it's me. It's Jackson. I'm here." Her eyes opened, just barely, and she looked at me. But there was no recognition, just fear, pure animal fear. She tried to say something, but her jaw was locked. her muscles so rigid she couldn't form words. The tremors were the worst I'd ever seen. Her hands were curled into claws, her legs twisted at unnatural angles. This wasn't just a missed dose. This was days without medication, days without help, days of her body tearing itself apart. I looked around, desperate for answers, and that's when I saw them. Plates. 2 paper plates with sandwiches on them, now green with mold. 3 bottles of water, sealed, sitting just out of reach, maybe 5 feet away from where Elena lay. Sophie had left her food. She'd left her water. But she'd placed them far enough away that Elena, unable to move, unable to crawl, couldn't get to them. My daughter had left my wife to starve, to die slowly, in the dark, listening to her own body betray her while food sat just beyond her fingertips. I pulled Elena into my arms, cradling her shaking body against my chest, and I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, because there were no words for what I was feeling. No words for the rage, the guilt, the horror. I had left her. I had trusted Sophie, and my wife had paid the price. I didn't let go of Elena. Not even when I pulled out my phone with one trembling hand and dialed 911. The operator answered on the first ring. Some woman with a calm, professional voice that made me want to scream. 911, what's your emergency? I couldn't even get the words out at first. My throat was too tight, my chest heaving with sobs I didn't know I was holding back. My wife, someone locked her in our basement. She's been here for days. She has Parkinson's. She needs her medication. Please send someone, now. The operator asked for my address, asked me to stay on the line, asked if Elena was breathing. Yes, barely. Her pulse was thready and weak under my fingers, her skin cold and clammy. I kept whispering to her, over and over, "You're okay. You're safe now. I've got you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The paramedics arrived in what felt like seconds and what felt like hours. I heard the sirens, heard the pounding on the front door, and I shouted, "Down here, we're in the basement." They came thundering down the stairs, 2 men and a woman in navy uniforms, carrying bags and a stretcher. They took one look at Elena, and their faces went grim. Professional. The woman knelt beside me and gently touched my shoulder. "Sir, we need you to let go so we can help her." I didn't want to. I didn't want to let her go. Not even for a second. But I forced myself to move back, to give them space. They worked fast, checking her vitals, starting an IV, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. One of the paramedics, a young guy with kind eyes, looked at me and said, "How long has she been down here?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I was gone for 10 days. My daughter was supposed to be taking care of her. I just got home and..." My voice broke. He nodded, his jaw tightening. "We're taking her to St. Mary's. You can ride with us." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Because there was one thing I needed to know. I needed to know why. I stumbled back upstairs while the paramedics loaded Elena onto the stretcher, and I went straight to Sophie's room. The door was open. The bed was made, like I'd noticed before. But now I really looked. Her closet door was ajar. Half her clothes were gone. Her makeup bag, her laptop, her favorite jacket. All gone. She hadn't been here in days. Maybe longer, and that's when I saw it, sitting on her pillow, folded neatly in half, a piece of notebook paper. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't unfold it. The message was written in red, lipstick, I realized, in Sophie's looping handwriting. "Dad, I borrowed $1,500 for an emergency trip to Vegas with some friends. Once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mom's going to be fine. She has food and water in the basement. Didn't want her wandering around and falling while you were gone. I'll be back Monday. Love you." And I read it twice, 3 times. My vision blurred. The paper crumpled in my fist, She'd locked her mother in a basement like an animal, left her to suffer, to starve, to die. And she called it borrowing money for a trip. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I looked at that note, at those careless, cheerful words, and something inside me shattered. My daughter wasn't confused. She wasn't scared or overwhelmed. She was a monster, and I was going to make sure she paid for every second of what she'd done. I rode in the ambulance with Elena, holding her hand while the paramedics worked. They had her hooked up to machines, IV fluids running into her veins, oxygen mask over her face. She was in and out of consciousness. Sometimes her eyes would flutter open, and she'd look at me with this confusion, this terror, like she didn't know where she was or what was happening. I kept talking to her, my voice steady even though I was falling apart inside. "You're safe now, baby. We're going to the hospital. They're going to take care of you. I'm right here. I'm not leaving." One of the paramedics, the woman, caught my eye. Her expression was hard, angry. "Sir, I need to ask you something. The conditions we found her in, that wasn't an accident, was it?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. She nodded slowly, like she'd suspected as much. "The hospital is going to have to file a report. This is elder abuse. The police will be involved." St. Mary's emergency room was chaos. Bright lights, people shouting medical jargon I didn't understand, the sharp smell of disinfectant. They wheeled Elena away immediately. Through a set of double doors I wasn't allowed past. A nurse with gray hair and tired eyes led me to a waiting room and told me someone would update me soon. I sat there in a plastic chair, still wearing the same clothes I'd traveled in, dried sweat and basement grime and Elena's. I couldn't even think about it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Richard. "Hey Jackson, just wanted to say great work in Denver. Take tomorrow off. You've earned it." I stared at that message and wanted to laugh, or scream. I'd saved the merger. I'd saved the company's revenue. And while I was doing that, my wife was dying in a basement, and my daughter was spending stolen money in Las Vegas. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a doctor came out, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and glasses. "Mr. Hayes?" I shot to my feet. "Is she okay? Is Elena?" He gestured for me to sit. And that's when I knew it was bad. Doctors only make you sit when the news is going to break you. "Your wife is stable," he said, and I almost collapsed with relief. "But Mr. Hayes, I need to be very clear with you about what we found. Elena is severely dehydrated. Her kidneys are on the verge of failure. She's malnourished, and her Parkinson's medication has been absent from her system for at least 7 to 8 days. The muscle rigidity and tremors have caused significant strain on her body. If you'd found her even 24 hours later..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She wouldn't have made it." The room spun. 7 to 8 days. That meant Sophie had locked her in that basement almost immediately after I left. Maybe the same day. The doctor leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Mr. Hayes, I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. What happened to your wife? This wasn't neglect. This wasn't someone forgetting to check on her. This was deliberate. Someone locked her in that basement, left her minimal resources just out of reach, and walked away knowing exactly what would happen." He paused, his eyes locked on mine. "Your wife's condition, her need for medication, anyone caring for her would have known missing even 1 dose would cause her severe distress. Missing 7 days' worth. That's not an accident. That's attempted murder." The words hung in the air between us. Attempted murder. My daughter had tried to kill my wife, her own mother. And if I'd stayed in Denver just 1 more day, if that merger meeting had run late, if my flight had been delayed, she would have succeeded. They let me see Elena around 4 a.m. She was in the ICU, hooked up to more machines than I could count, monitors beeping, IV lines running into both arms, a ventilator helping her breathe. She looked so small in that hospital bed, so fragile. I pulled a chair up beside her and took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV. Her skin was warmer now, not that awful cold clamminess from the basement. I sat there watching her chest rise and fall, and I made a promise. Not to her, she couldn't hear me, but to myself. Sophie wasn't going to get away with this. I didn't care if she was my daughter. I didn't care about the memories of bedtime stories and birthday parties and teaching her to ride a bike. That person was gone. Or maybe she'd never existed at all. At 6 a.m., a police officer arrived. Detective Maria Santos, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from me in a small consultation room and pulled out a notepad. "Mr. Hayes, I need you to walk me through everything. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about the business trip, about Sophie's offer to care for Elena, about the phone calls and the texts and that photo Sophie had sent, the one I'd been stupid enough to believe. I told her about coming home to a dark house, about the scratching sounds and the padlock and what I'd found in the basement. My voice stayed steady until I got to the part about the food just out of Elena's reach. That's when I broke. Detective Santos handed me a tissue and waited. When I finally pulled myself together, I showed her the note. She read it twice, her expression darkening. "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to be very direct with you. This isn't a missing person case. This is attempted murder. And based on what you've told me and what the doctors have documented, we have enough to get a warrant for your daughter's arrest." I gave Detective Santos everything. Sophie's phone number, her social media accounts, the names of her friends I could remember. And then I remembered something else. "The credit card," I said, sitting up straighter. "I left her my credit card for emergencies. She used it to buy the plane tickets, right? Can you track that?" Santos nodded, already typing into her laptop. "We can pull the transaction records, see where and when it was used." It took her less than 20 minutes. She turned the screen toward me, and I felt my stomach drop. "Your daughter made several purchases over the last 9 days. A flight to Las Vegas on the day after you left, hotel charges at the Bellagio, casino transactions, restaurant bills, and then..." She scrolled down, her jaw tightening. "Car this morning, at 6:47 a.m. East Coast time, she purchased a one-way ticket to Ibiza, Spain. The flight leaves from JFK at 2:30 p.m. today." Everything went red. She wasn't in Vegas. She'd never planned to come back. She was going to disappear to Europe with her boyfriend. Yeah, I'd seen him on her Instagram, some wannabe influencer named Tyler with expensive taste and no job, and leave her mother to die. Leave me to find the body. The detective was already on her phone, making calls, her voice clipped and professional. "I need a bolo on Sophie Marie Hayes, 24-year-old white female, brown hair, green eyes, last known location Vegas, but she's booked on a flight out of JFK to Ibiza at 14:30 today. I want airport security notified immediately. Consider her a flight risk for attempted murder." She hung up and looked at me. "Mr. Hayes, your daughter made a critical mistake. She used your credit card, which means we have a digital trail. And if she tries to board that flight, we'll be waiting." I should have felt relief. I should have felt something other than this cold, burning rage. But all I could think about was Elena, lying in that ICU bed, fighting for her life, and Sophie, probably sipping champagne in some airport lounge, scrolling through vacation photos, not giving a damn about what she'd done. Detective Santos told me to go home, get some rest, let them handle it. But I couldn't leave Elena. I stayed in that ICU waiting room, drinking terrible coffee from a vending machine and staring at my phone. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept imagining Sophie at the airport, breezing through security with that fake smile of hers, boarding that plane, and vanishing into a country with no extradition treaty. The thought made me physically sick. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on the first ring. "Mr. Hayes, this is Detective Santos. We've got her." My knees went weak. I had to sit down. "Where? Is she? Did she?" Santos's voice was calm, but I could hear the satisfaction in it. Port Authority police intercepted her at JFK. She was 10 minutes from boarding. She's in custody now. Santos sent me a video later that afternoon, body cam footage from one of the officers at the airport. I watched it 3 times, and I'm not proud to say it, but I felt nothing but satisfaction. The video starts with Sophie walking through the terminal, laughing at something on her phone. She's wearing expensive sunglasses, a designer carry-on bag slung over her shoulder. She looks like she doesn't have a care in the world. Then you see the officers approach, 2 of them, calm and professional. Sophie Hayes? She looks up, confused. Yeah? And then they say the words. You're under arrest for attempted murder and elder abuse. The confusion on her face turns to panic. She actually tries to back away, like she's going to run, but there's nowhere to go. The officers move in, and one of them takes her bag while the other pulls out handcuffs. Wait, what? No, this is a mistake. My dad, someone call my dad. She's shouting now, loud enough that people are stopping to stare. The officer reads her rights while securing the cuffs. And Sophie is losing it. This is insane. I was taking care of my mom. She's fine. This is just a misunderstanding. But here's the part that really got me. As they're walking her through the terminal, past all those travelers with their phones out recording, Sophie sees the camera and her whole demeanor changes. The panic drops away, and suddenly she's crying, these big, dramatic sobs, and she's saying, "It was just a joke. I was coming back. I would never hurt her. Please, you have to believe me." A joke. She called locking her mother in a basement, leaving her to die. A joke. The officers don't react. They just keep walking, escorting her toward the exit where a police car is waiting. Detective Santos told me later that when they searched Sophie's bag, they found $3 $200 in cash, money she'd withdrawn from Elena's savings account. Elena's account, the one we'd been building for years to cover her medical expenses, her future care. Sophie had drained it, every penny. She was going to start a new life in Europe on her mother's dime, funded by the woman she'd left to rot. Elena spent 3 weeks in the hospital. 3 weeks of physical therapy, of getting her medication levels stabilized, of trying to undo the damage Sophie had done. The doctor said she was lucky. Her kidneys recovered. Her tremors were manageable again with the right dosage adjustments. But the psychological damage, that was something else entirely. She had nightmares every night. She'd wake up screaming, clawing at the air, convinced she was back in that basement. She couldn't be alone in a room without panicking. She couldn't go near our basement door without having a full breakdown. The woman I'd been married to for 23 years, the woman who used to laugh at bad movies and dance in the kitchen while making dinner, she was gone. And I didn't know if she was ever coming back. Sophie's trial was fast. Her public defender tried to argue that she'd had a mental breakdown, that she didn't understand what she was doing. But the prosecution had evidence, those credit card statements, the surveillance footage of her living it up in Vegas while her mother was dying, the empty savings account, that goddamn note written in lipstick. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and theft. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison. No parole eligibility for at least 10. I sat in that courtroom and watched my daughter, my little girl, the one I'd rocked to sleep and taught to tie her shoes, get led away in handcuffs. She looked back at me once, her eyes desperate, mouthing the words, "I'm sorry, Daddy." I looked away. I visited her once in prison, about 2 months after the sentencing. I don't know why I went. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to hear her explain. She sat across from me in that gray jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup, looking younger and smaller than I remembered. She tried to take my hand through the partition. I pulled back. "Dad, please, I made a mistake. I was scared about money, and I panicked, and I cut her off. You locked your mother in a basement for 10 days. You stole her medication. You stole her money. You left her to die." My voice was quiet, steady. You're not my daughter anymore. I don't know what you are, but you're not her. She started crying, but I didn't stay to watch. I walked out of that prison, and I never went back. Elena and I sold the house. Too many memories, too much trauma. We moved to a smaller place across town. 1 floor, no basement, with a state-of-the-art security system that cost more than our first car. I retired early to take care of her full-time. Some days are good. She'll smile at a joke, or we'll watch her baking show, and for a moment, it feels almost normal. But other days, I catch her staring at nothing, and I know she's back in that basement, in the dark, wondering if anyone's coming. I failed her once. I trusted the wrong person, and it almost cost Elena her life. I won't make that mistake again. We're rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, and every single day, I remind her, you're safe now. I've got you. Always. In dark, monsters don't always hide under the bed or lurk in dark alleys. Sometimes they grow up under your own roof, smiling at the dinner table, calling you Dad. You think you know them. You think you raised them right. And then one day, you realize you were living with a stranger all along. Pause. But not every family betrayal ends with police and prison time. Sometimes, revenge is quieter, more personal, more public. Sometimes justice is served in front of 200 wedding guests, with a projector screen and a slideshow no one will ever forget. Click the story on your screen to find out how one bride exposed her billionaire fiancé and his mistress at the altar and walked away with everything.